In 1818, a young woman by the name of Mary Shelley published a novel that would change the course of literature and popular culture forever. The novel was Frankenstein, and what's even more astonishing is that Mary Shelley wrote it when she was only 18 years old. Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, is the story of Dr. Victor Frankenstein and the monster he created. The story is often interpreted as showing the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition and the consequences of playing God. The novel explores the consequences of Frankenstein's desire to create life and his subsequent abandonment of his creation. All of Victor Frankenstein's initial ambition was to create life and push the boundaries of science. He succeeded in bringing his creature to life, but he quickly realised he had made a mistake. He abandoned the creature, which led to a chain of events that ultimately caused him to become obsessed with destroying it. Mary Shelley was born in 1797 in London. Her parents were both writers, and her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, was a well-known feminist and philosopher. Unfortunately, Mary's mother died shortly after giving birth to Mary, leaving her father to raise her alone. Mary Shelley's early exposure to literature and scientific ideas was largely due to her upbringing and education. Her father, William Godwin, was a prominent political philosopher and writer. Although Mary didn't have a formal education, she was taught how to read and write at home. Her father allowed her to sit quietly in a corner and listen to his political, philosophical, scientific or literary discussions with his friends. Among those friends were names such as William Wordsworth, Charles and Mary Lamb, Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Hazlitt. Mary also had access to a wide range of literature and philosophical texts through her father's extensive library. He encouraged her to read, write and imagine as much as possible. Mary met the poet Percy Shelley, a devoted follower of her father, when she was just 16 years old. Percy was married at the time to Harriet Westbrook, but he and Mary soon fell deeply in love. When Mary's father found out about the blossoming romance, he wrote to Shelley and forbid Mary from seeing him. Never deterred, Mary and Percy Shelley eloped in July 1814 and travelled to Europe together. They travelled from France to Switzerland and then on to Italy, where they stayed until the summer of 1816. It is during these travels that Mary Shelley would become pregnant. She gave birth to their first child in September 1815. The baby was born prematurely and would tragically die a few weeks later. This death would forever haunt Mary, and she sunk into depression soon after. More unfortunate events would surround the couple. Percy's wife Harriet drowned herself in the Serpentine in Hyde Park, London in 1816. It is thought that she suffered from depression, and this was exacerbated by the breakdown of her marriage to Percy. After Harriet's death, Mary and Percy would soon be free to marry, and although surrounded by dark and sad events, the circle of friends the marriage would expose Mary to widened. In 1816, Mary Shelley and her husband Percy travelled to Switzerland to spend the summer with a group of friends. Percy was friends with Lord Byron and his physician John William Polidori. They rented a villa near the shores of Lake Geneva. During their stay they spent a lot of time reading and discussing ghost stories and Gothic literature, which was extremely popular at the time. One evening they decided to challenge each other to write their own Gothic stories as a form of entertainment. The challenge was essentially a friendly competition among friends to see who could come up with the best Gothic horror story. According to Mary Shelley's account, she struggled at first to come up with an idea. After a few days of thinking, she had a nightmare that inspired her to write the start of her story. John William Polidori would also write a story, which was later published as The Vampire, based on the story told by Lord Byron one evening during their stay. This was the first story in English literature to popularise the concept of vampires. Where did Mary's idea of Frankenstein emerge from? To understand, we need to learn about the science of galvanism. This is an area of science that caught the public's imagination just at the same time Mary would be writing Frankenstein. Galvanism refers to the effects produced by the application of an electric current to the body, particularly to muscles or nerves. It is named after the Italian physician and physicist Luigi Galvani, who first conducted experiments on animal tissues in the late 18th century. Galvani was researching the nervous system of frogs when an electric machine discharged just at the moment one of Galvani's assistants touched the crural nerve of a dissected frog with a scalpel. The frog's legs twitched as the discharge happened. Galvani realised he could make a circuit with the frog's legs, causing it to twitch. He believed this was a type of animal electricity or vital life force present in all living things. This idea of reanimating the dead tissue of an animal with electricity would directly inspire Mary Shelley. This quote from the introduction of the 1931 edition of Frankenstein tells us of the dream Mary had when she was trying to come up with an idea for her novel. I saw, with shut eyes but acute mental vision, I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life, and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. Frightful must it be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any human endeavour to mock the stupendous mechanism of the Creator of the world. Mary was also deeply affected by the recurring dreams she had about the premature child she lost. In a journal entry in 1815, she wrote, "A dream, that my little baby came to life again, that it had only been cold, and that we rubbed it before the fire, and it lives." This terribly sad image certainly contains a hint of the themes and elements that would later be incorporated into Frankenstein. Mary began writing the novel when she was just 18 years old. It took her less than a year to complete and was published anonymously in 1818. Frankenstein was an immediate success and has since become a classic of English literature. It's been adapted countless times in various forms of media, including films, TV shows and plays. The story of Frankenstein explores themes such as the dangers of science, the consequences of playing God, and the meaning of humanity. Mary Shelley's life was full of tragedy and heartbreak, including the deaths of 3 of her children, and her husband Percy would drown in a boating accident in 1822, just a few short years after Frankenstein was first published. Her legacy lives on through her remarkable novel, and the impact it had on culture. I encourage you to pick up a copy of Frankenstein. But if you don't, maybe you just hear the name Frankenstein or watch a movie adaptation. Remember the incredible story of its young author, Mary Shelley.